Constituencies. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, commonly known as the United Kingdom, UK, or Britain, is a sovereign country located off the northwestern coast of the European mainland. The United Kingdom includes the island of Great Britain, the northeastern part of the island of Ireland, and many smaller islands. Northern Ireland is the only part of the United Kingdom that shares a land border with another sovereign state, the Republic of Ireland. Apart from this land border, the United Kingdom is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, with the North Sea to the east, the English Channel to the south and the Celtic Sea to the southwest, giving it the 12th longest coastline in the world. The Irish Sea separates Great Britain and Ireland. The United Kingdom's 242,500 square kilometers, 93,600 square miles, were home to an estimated 66.0 million inhabitants in 2017. The United Kingdom is a unitary parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy. The current monarch is Queen Elizabeth II, who has reigned since 1952, making her the world's longest-serving current head of state. The United Kingdom's capital and largest city is London, a global city and financial center with an urban area population of 10.3 million. Other major cities include Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Leeds, and Liverpool. The United Kingdom consists of 4 constituent countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Their capitals are London, Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast, respectively. Apart from England, the countries have their own devolved governments, each with varying powers, but such power is delegated by the Parliament of the United Kingdom, which may enact laws unilaterally altering or abolishing devolution. The nearby Isle of Man, Bailiwick of Guernsey and Bailiwick of Jersey are not part of the UK, being Crown dependencies with the British government responsible for defence and international representation. The medieval conquest and subsequent annexation of Wales by the Kingdom of England, followed by the union between England and Scotland in 1707 to form the Kingdom of Great Britain, and the union in 1801 of Great Britain with the Kingdom of Ireland created the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. 5/6 of Ireland seceded from the UK in 1922, leaving the present formulation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. There are 14 British overseas territories, the remnants of the British Empire which, at its height in the 1920s, encompassed almost a quarter of the world's landmass and was the largest empire in history. British influence can be observed in the language, culture and political systems of many of its former colonies. The United Kingdom is a developed country and has the world's 6th largest economy by nominal GDP and 9th largest economy by purchasing power parity. It has a high-income economy and has a very high Human Development Index rating, ranking 14th in the world. It was the world's first industrialized country and the world's foremost power during the 19th and early 20th centuries. The UK remains a great power, with considerable economic, cultural, military, scientific and political influence internationally. It is a recognized nuclear weapons state and is 6th in military expenditure in the world. It has been a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council since its first session in 1946. It has been a leading member state of the European Union, EU, and its predecessor, the European Economic Community, EC, since 1973. A referendum in 2016 resulted in 51.9% of the turnout being in favor of leaving the EU, which is currently scheduled to take place on October 31, 2019. The United Kingdom is also a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, the Council of Europe, the G7, the G20, NATO, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, Interpol and the World Trade Organization, WTO. Etymology and terminology. The 1707 Acts of Union declared that the kingdoms of England and Scotland were united into one kingdom by the name of Great Britain. The term United Kingdom has occasionally been used as a description for the former Kingdom of Great Britain, although its official name from 1707 to 1800 was simply Great Britain. The Acts of Union 1800 united the Kingdom of Great Britain and the Kingdom of Ireland in 1801, forming the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Following the partition of Ireland and the independence of the Irish Free State in 1922, which left Northern Ireland as the only part of the island of Ireland within the United Kingdom, the name was changed to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Although the United Kingdom is a sovereign country, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are also widely referred to as countries. The UK Prime Minister's website has used the phrase countries within a country to describe the United Kingdom. Some statistical summaries, such as those for the 12 Nuts 1 regions of the United Kingdom, refer to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as regions. Northern Ireland is also referred to as a province. With regard to Northern Ireland, the descriptive name used can be controversial, with the choice often revealing one's political preferences. The term Great Britain conventionally refers to the island of Great Britain, or politically to England, Scotland and Wales in combination. It is sometimes used as a loose synonym for the United Kingdom as a whole. The term Britain is used both as a synonym for Great Britain, and as a synonym for the United Kingdom. Usage is mixed, with the BBC preferring to use Britain as shorthand only for Great Britain and the UK government, while accepting that both terms refer to the United Kingdom, preferring to use the term UK rather than Britain. The UK Permanent Committee on Geographical Names lists United Kingdom and UK or UK as shortened and abbreviated geopolitical terms for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It does not list Britain, stating that it has been used informally by government websites. The adjective British is commonly used to refer to matters relating to the United Kingdom. The term has no definite legal connotation, but is used in law to refer to United Kingdom citizenship in matters to do with nationality. People of the United Kingdom use a number of different terms to describe their national identity and may identify themselves as being British, English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, or as belonging to a combination of different national identities. History. Background. Settlement by anatomically modern humans of what was to become the United Kingdom occurred in waves beginning by about 30,000 years ago. By the end of the region's prehistoric period, the population is thought to have belonged, in the main, to a culture termed Insular Celtic, comprising Britannic Britain and Gaelic Ireland. The Roman conquest, beginning in 43 AD, and the 400-year rule of southern Britain, was followed by an invasion by Germanic Anglo-Saxon settlers, reducing the Britannic area mainly to what was to become Wales, Cornwall and, until the latter stages of the Anglo-Saxon settlement, the Hin Ogollede, northern England and parts of southern Scotland. Most of the region settled by the Anglo-Saxons became unified as the Kingdom of England in the 10th century. Meanwhile, Gaelic speakers in northwest Britain, with connections to the northeast of Ireland and traditionally supposed to have migrated from there in the 5th century, united with the Picts to create the Kingdom of Scotland in the 9th century. In 1066, the Normans and their Breton allies invaded England from northern France and after its conquest, seized large parts of Wales, conquered much of Ireland and were invited to settle in Scotland, bringing to each country feudalism on the northern French model and Norman French culture. The Anglo-Roman ruling class greatly influenced, but eventually assimilated fault with, each of the local cultures. Subsequent medieval English kings completed the conquest of Wales and made an unsuccessful attempt to annex Scotland. Following the declaration of Arbroath, Scotland maintained its independence, albeit in near constant conflict with England. The English monarchs, through inheritance of substantial territories in France and claims to the French crown, were also heavily involved in conflicts in France, most notably the 100 Years' War, while the kings of Scots were in an alliance with the French during this period. Early modern Britain saw religious conflict resulting from the Reformation and the introduction of Protestant state churches in each country. Wales was fully incorporated into the Kingdom of England, and Ireland was constituted as a kingdom in personal union with the English crown. In what was to become Northern Ireland, the lands of the independent Catholic Gaelic nobility were confiscated and given to Protestant settlers from England and Scotland. In 1603, the kingdoms of England, Scotland and Ireland were united in a personal union when James VI, King of Scots, inherited the crowns of England and Ireland and moved his court from Edinburgh to London. Each country nevertheless remained a separate political entity and retained its separate political, legal, and religious institutions. In the mid-17th century, all three kingdoms were involved in a series of connected wars, including the English Civil War, which led to the temporary overthrow of the monarchy, with the execution of King Charles I, and the establishment of the short-lived Unitary Republic of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland. During the 17th and 18th centuries, British sailors were involved in acts of piracy, privateering, attacking and stealing from ships off the coast of Europe and the Caribbean. Although the monarchy was restored, the interregnum, along with the Glorious Revolution of 1688 and the subsequent Bill of Rights 1689, and the Claim of Right Act 1689, ensured that, unlike much of the rest of Europe, royal absolutism would not prevail, and a professed Catholic could never accede to the throne. The British Constitution would develop on the basis of constitutional monarchy and the parliamentary system. With the founding of the Royal Society in 1660, science was greatly encouraged. During this period, particularly in England, the development of naval power, and the interest in voyages of discovery, led to the acquisition and settlement of overseas colonies, particularly in North America. Though previous attempts at uniting the two kingdoms within Great Britain in 1606, 1667, and 1689 had proved unsuccessful, the attempt initiated in 1705 led to the Treaty of Union of 1706 being agreed and ratified by both parliaments. Treaty of Union. On May 1, 1707, the United Kingdom of Great Britain came into being, the result of Acts of Union being passed by the Parliaments of England and Scotland to ratify the 1706 Treaty of Union and so unite the two kingdoms. In the 18th century, cabinet government developed under Robert Walpole, in practice the first Prime Minister, 1721 to 1742. A series of Jacobite uprisings sought to remove the Protestant House of Hanover from the British throne and restore the Catholic House of Stuart. The Jacobites were finally defeated at the Battle of Culloden in 1746, after which the Scottish Highlanders were brutally suppressed. The British colonies in North America that broke away from Britain in the American War of Independence became the United States of America, recognized by Britain in 1783. British imperial ambition turned towards Asia, particularly to India. During the 18th century, Britain was involved in the Atlantic slave trade. British ships transported an estimated 2 million slaves from Africa to the West Indies. Parliament banned the trade in 1807, banned slavery in the British Empire in 1833, and Britain took a leading role in the movement to abolish slavery worldwide through the blockade of Africa and pressing other nations to end their trade with a series of treaties. The world's oldest international human rights organization, Anti-Slavery International, was formed in London in 1839. From the union with Ireland to the end of the First World War. The term United Kingdom became official in 1801 when the Parliaments of Britain and Ireland each passed an Act of Union, uniting the two kingdoms and creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. In the early 19th century, the British-led Industrial Revolution began to transform the country. Gradually political power shifted away from the old Tory and Whig landowning classes towards the new industrialists. An alliance of merchants and industrialists with the Whigs would lead to a new party, the Liberals, with an ideology of free trade and laissez-faire. In 1832 Parliament passed the Great Reform Act, which began the transfer of political power from the aristocracy to the middle classes. In the countryside, enclosure of the land was driving small farmers out. Towns and cities began to swell with a new urban working class. Few ordinary workers had the vote, and they created their own organizations in the form of trade unions. After the defeat of France at the end of the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, 1792 to 1815, the United Kingdom emerged as the principal naval and imperial power of the 19th century, with London the largest city in the world from about 1830. Unchallenged at sea, British dominance was later described as Pax Britannica, British peace, a period of relative peace among the great powers, 1815 to 1914, during which the British Empire became the global hegemon and adopted the role of global policeman. By the time of the Great Exhibition of 1851, Britain was described as the workshop of the world. The British Empire was expanded to include India, large parts of Africa and many other territories throughout the world. Alongside the formal control it exerted over its own colonies, British dominance of much of world trade meant that it effectively controlled the economies of many regions, such as Asia and Latin America. Domestically, political attitudes favored free trade and laissez-faire policies and a gradual widening of the voting franchise. During the century, the population increased at a dramatic rate, accompanied by rapid urbanization, causing significant social and economic stresses. To seek new markets and sources of raw materials, the Conservative Party under Disraeli launched a period of imperialist expansion in Egypt, South Africa, and elsewhere. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand became self-governing dominions. After the turn of the century, Britain's industrial dominance was challenged by Germany and the United States. Social reform and home rule for Ireland were important domestic issues after 1900. The Labour Party emerged from an alliance of trade unions and small socialist groups in 1900, and suffragettes campaigned from before 1914 for women's right to vote. Britain fought alongside France, Russia and, after 1917, the United States, against Germany and its allies in the First World War, 1914 to 1918. British armed forces were engaged across much of the British Empire and in several regions of Europe, particularly on the Western Front. The high fatalities of trench warfare caused the loss of much of a generation of men, with lasting social effects in the nation and a great disruption in the social order. After the war, Britain received the League of Nations mandate over a number of former German and Ottoman colonies. The British Empire reached its greatest extent, governing a fifth of the world's land surface and a quarter of its population. Britain had suffered 2.5 million casualties and finished the war with a huge national debt. Between the world wars, the rise of Irish nationalism, and disputes within Ireland over the terms of Irish Home Rule, led eventually to the partition of the island in 1921. The Irish Free State became independent, initially with Dominion status in 1922, and unambiguously independent in 1931. Northern Ireland remained part of the United Kingdom. The 1928 Act widened suffrage by giving women electoral equality with men. A wave of strikes in the mid-1920s culminated in the general strike of 1926. Britain had still not recovered from the effects of the war when the Great Depression, 1929 to 1932, occurred. This led to considerable unemployment and hardship in the old industrial areas, as well as political and social unrest in the 1930s, with rising membership in communist and socialist parties. A coalition government was formed in 1931. Britain entered the Second World War by declaring war on Nazi Germany in 1939 after Germany had invaded Poland. Winston Churchill became Prime Minister and head of a coalition government in 1940. Despite the defeat of its European allies in the first year of the war, Britain and its empire continued the fight alone against Germany. In 1940, the Royal Air Force defeated the German Luftwaffe in a struggle for control of the skies in the Battle of Britain. Urban areas suffered heavy bombing during the Blitz. There were also eventual hard-fought victories in the Battle of the Atlantic, the North Africa Campaign and the Burma Campaign. British forces played an important role in the Normandy landings of 1944, achieved with its United States ally. Since the Second World War. After the end of the Second World War in 1945, the UK was one of the Big Four powers, along with the US, the Soviet Union, and China, who met to plan the post-war world. It was an original signatory to the Declaration of the United Nations. The UK became one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council and worked closely with the United States to establish the IMF, World Bank and NATO. The war left the UK severely weakened and depending financially on the Marshall Plan. In the immediate post-war years, the Labour government initiated a radical program of reforms, which had a significant effect on British society in the following decades. Major industries and public utilities were nationalized, a welfare state was established, and a comprehensive, publicly funded healthcare system, the National Health Service, was created. The rise of nationalism in the colonies coincided with Britain's now much diminished economic position, so that a policy of decolonization was unavoidable. Independence was granted to India and Pakistan in 1947. Over the next 3 decades, most colonies of the British Empire gained their independence, with all those that sought independence supported by the UK, during both the transition period and afterwards. Many became members of the Commonwealth of Nations. The UK was the third country to develop a nuclear weapons arsenal, with its first atomic bomb test in 1952, but the new post-war limits of Britain's international role were illustrated by the Suez Crisis of 1956. The international spread of the English language ensured the continuing international influence of its literature and culture. As a result of a shortage of workers in the 1950s, the government encouraged immigration from Commonwealth countries. In the following decades, the UK became a more multi-ethnic society than before. Despite rising living standards in the late 1950s and 1960s, the UK's economic performance was less successful than many of its main competitors such as France, West Germany, and Japan. In the decade-long process of European integration, the UK was a founding member of the alliance called the Western European Union, established with the London and Paris conferences in 1954. In 1960 the UK was one of the 7 founding members of the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, but in 1973 it left to join the European Communities, EC. When the EC became the European Union, EU, in 1992, the UK was one of the 12 founding members. The Treaty of Lisbon was signed in 2007, which forms the constitutional basis of the European Union since then. From the late 1960s, Northern Ireland suffered communal and paramilitary violence, sometimes affecting other parts of the UK, conventionally known as the Troubles. It is usually considered to have ended with the Belfast Good Friday Agreement of 1998. Following a period of widespread economic slowdown and industrial strife in the 1970s, the Conservative government of the 1980s under Margaret Thatcher initiated a radical policy of monetarism, deregulation, particularly of the financial sector, for example, Big Bang in 1986, and labor markets, the sale of state-owned companies, privatization, and the withdrawal of subsidies to others. From 1984, the economy was helped by the inflow of substantial North Sea oil revenues. Around the end of the 20th century there were major changes to the governance of the UK with the establishment of devolved administrations for Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The statutory incorporation followed acceptance of the European Convention on Human Rights. The UK is still a key global player diplomatically and militarily. It plays leading roles in the EU, UN and NATO. Controversy surrounds some of Britain's overseas military deployments, particularly in Afghanistan and Iraq. The 2008 global financial crisis severely affected the UK economy. The coalition government of 2010 introduced austerity measures intended to tackle the substantial public deficits which resulted. In 2014 the Scottish government held a referendum on Scottish independence, with 55.3% of voters rejecting the independence proposal and opting to remain within the United Kingdom. In 2016, 51.9% of voters in the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. The legal process of leaving the EU began on March 29, 2017, with the UK's invocation of Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union, formally notifying the EU of the UK's intention to leave. The article stipulates that the negotiations to leave will last at least 2 years. The UK remains a full member of the EU during this time. Geography. The total area of the United Kingdom is approximately 244,820 square kilometers, 94,530 square miles. The country occupies the major part of the British Isles archipelago and includes the island of Great Britain, the northeastern 1/6 of the island of Ireland and some smaller surrounding islands. It lies between the North Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea with the southeast coast coming within 22 miles, 35 kilometers, of the coast of northern France, from which it is separated by the English Channel. In 1993, 10% of the UK was forested, 46% used for pastures and 25% cultivated for agriculture. The Royal Greenwich Observatory in London was chosen as the defining point of the prime meridian in Washington in 1884, though it no longer is. The United Kingdom lies between latitudes 49 degrees and 61 degrees N, and longitudes 9 degrees W and 2 degrees E. Northern Ireland shares a 224-mile, 360 kilometers, land boundary with the Republic of Ireland. The coastline of Great Britain is 11,073 miles, 17,820 kilometers, long. It is connected to continental Europe by the Channel Tunnel, which at 31 miles, 50 kilometers, 24 miles, 38 kilometers, underwater, is the longest underwater tunnel in the world. England accounts for just over half, 53%, of the total area of the UK, covering 130,395 square kilometers, 50,350 square miles. Most of the country consists of lowland terrain, with mountainous terrain northwest of the Tees line, including the Cumbrian Mountains of the Lake District, the Pennines, Exmoor, and Dartmoor. The main rivers and estuaries are the Thames, Severn and the Humber. England's highest mountain is Scafell Pike, 978 meters, 3,209 feet, in the Lake District. Scotland accounts for just under a third, 32%, of the total area of the UK, covering 78,772 square kilometers, 30,410 square miles. This includes nearly 800 islands, predominantly west and north of the mainland, notably the Hebrides, Orkney Islands, and Shetland Islands. Scotland is the most mountainous country in the UK, and its topography is distinguished by the Highland Boundary Fault, a geological rock fracture, which traverses Scotland from Arran in the west to Stonehaven in the east. The fault separates two distinctively different regions, namely the Highlands to the north and west and the lowlands to the south and east. The more rugged Highland region contains the majority of Scotland's mountainous land, including Ben Nevis, which at 1,345 meters, 4,413 feet, is the highest point in the British Isles. Lowland areas, especially the narrow waste of land between the Firth of Clyde and the Firth of Forth known as the Central Belt, are flatter and home to most of the population, including Glasgow, Scotland's largest city, and Edinburgh, its capital and political centre, although upland and mountainous terrain lies within the southern uplands. Wales accounts for less than a tenth, 9%, of the total area of the UK, covering 20,779 square kilometres, 8,020 square miles. Wales is mostly mountainous, though South Wales is less mountainous than North and Mid Wales. The main population and industrial areas are in South Wales, consisting of the coastal cities of Cardiff, Swansea, and Newport, and the South Wales valleys to their north. The highest mountains in Wales are in Snowdonia and include Snowdon, Welsh, Yrwitfa, which, at 1,085 metres, 3,560 feet, is the highest peak in Wales. Wales has over 2,704 kilometres, 1,680 miles, of coastline. Several islands lie off the Welsh mainland, the largest of which is Anglesey, Ynys Môn, in the northwest. Northern Ireland, separated from Great Britain by the Irish Sea and North Channel, has an area of 14,160 square kilometres, 5,470 square miles, and is mostly hilly. It includes Lough Neagh, which, at 388 square kilometres, 150 square miles, is the largest lake in the British Isles by area. The highest peak in Northern Ireland is Slieve Donard in the Mourne Mountains at 852 metres, 2,795 feet. Climate. The United Kingdom has a temperate climate, with plentiful rainfall all year round. The temperature varies, with the seasons seldom dropping below -11 degrees Celsius, 12 degrees Fahrenheit, or rising above 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The prevailing wind is from the southwest and bears frequent spells of mild and wet weather from the Atlantic Ocean, Although the eastern parts are mostly sheltered from this wind since the majority of the rain falls over the western regions, the eastern parts are therefore the driest. Atlantic currents, warmed by the Gulf Stream, bring mild winters, especially in the west where winters are wet and even more so over high ground. Summers are warmest in the southeast of England, being closest to the European mainland, and coolest in the north. Heavy snowfall can occur in winter and early spring on high ground, and occasionally settles to great depth away from the hills. Administrative divisions. The geographical division of the United Kingdom into counties or shires began in England and Scotland in the early Middle Ages and was complete throughout Great Britain and Ireland by the early modern period. Administrative arrangements were developed separately in each country of the United Kingdom, with origins which often predated the formation of the United Kingdom. Modern local government by elected councils, partly based on the ancient counties, was introduced separately, in England and Wales in a 1888 Act, Scotland in a 1889 Act and Ireland in a 1898 Act, meaning there is no consistent system of administrative or geographic demarcation across the United Kingdom. Until the 19th century there was little change to those arrangements, but there has since been a constant evolution of role and function. The organization of local government in England is complex, with the distribution of functions varying according to local arrangements. The upper-tier subdivisions of England are the 9 regions, now used primarily for statistical purposes. One region, Greater London, has had a directly elected assembly and mayor since 2000 following popular support for the proposal in a referendum. It was intended that other regions would also be given their own elected regional assemblies, but a proposed assembly in the Northeast region was rejected by a referendum in 2004. Below the regional tier, some parts of England have county councils and district councils and others have unitary authorities, while London consists of 32 London boroughs and the City of London. Councillors are elected by the first-past-the-post system in single-member wards or by the multi-member plurality system in multi-member wards. For local government purposes, Scotland is divided into 32 council areas, with wide variation in both size and population. The cities of Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Dundee are separate council areas, as is the Highland Council, which includes a third of Scotland's area but only just over 200,000 people. Local councils are made up of elected councillors, of whom there are 1,223, they are paid a part-time salary. Elections are conducted by single transferable vote in multi-member wards that elect either 3 or 4 councillors. Each council elects a provost, or convener, to chair meetings of the council and to act as a figurehead for the area. Local government in Wales consists of 22 unitary authorities. These include the cities of Cardiff, Swansea, and Newport, which are unitary authorities in their own right. Elections are held every 4 years under the first-past-the-post system. Local government in Northern Ireland has since 1973 been organised into 26 district councils, each elected by single transferable vote. Their powers are limited to services such as collecting waste, controlling dogs and maintaining parks and cemeteries. In 2008 the executive agreed on proposals to create 11 new councils and replace the present system. Dependencies. The United Kingdom has sovereignty over 17 territories which do not form part of the United Kingdom itself, 14 British overseas territories and 3 Crown dependencies. The 14 British overseas territories are, Anguilla, Bermuda, the British Antarctic Territory, the British Indian Ocean Territory, the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, the Falkland Islands, Gibraltar, Montserrat, St. Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha, the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Pitcairn Islands, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, and Akrotiri and Helion on the island of Cyprus. British claims in Antarctica are not universally recognized, mainly by Argentina, whose claims cover a majority of the British sector. Collectively Britain's overseas territories encompass an approximate land area of 1,727,570 square kilometers, 667,018 square miles, and a population of approximately 260,000 people. They are the last remaining remnants of the British Empire, and a 1999 UK government white paper stated that the overseas territories are British for as long as they wish to remain British. Britain has willingly granted independence where it has been requested, and we will continue to do so where this is an option. Self-determination is also enshrined into the constitutions of several overseas territories, and 3 have specifically voted to remain under British sovereignty: Bermuda in 1995, Gibraltar in 2002, and the Falkland Islands in 2013. The Crown dependencies are possessions of the Crown, as opposed to overseas territories of the UK. They comprise 3 independently administered jurisdictions: the Channel Islands of Jersey and Guernsey in the English Channel, and the Isle of Man in the Irish Sea. By mutual agreement, the British government manages the islands' foreign affairs and defence, and the UK Parliament has the authority to legislate on their behalf. Internationally, they are regarded as territories for which the United Kingdom is responsible. The power to pass legislation affecting the islands ultimately rests with their own respective legislative assemblies, with the assent of the Crown, Privy Council, or, in the case of the Isle of Man, in certain circumstances the Lieutenant Governor. Since 2005, each Crown dependency has had a Chief Minister as its head of government. The British dependencies use a varied assortment of currencies. These include the British pound, US dollar, New Zealand dollar, euro, or their own currencies, which may be pegged to either. Politics. The United Kingdom is a unitary state under a constitutional monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II is the monarch and head of state of the UK, as well as 15 other independent countries. These 16 countries are sometimes referred to as Commonwealth realms. The monarch has the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. The Constitution of the United Kingdom is uncodified and consists mostly of a collection of disparate written sources, including statutes, judge-made case law, and international treaties, together with constitutional conventions. As there is no technical difference between ordinary statutes and constitutional law, the UK Parliament can perform constitutional reform simply by passing Acts of Parliament, and thus has the political power to change or abolish almost any written or unwritten element of the Constitution. No Parliament can pass laws that future Parliaments cannot change. Government. The UK has a parliamentary government based on the Westminster system that has been emulated around the world, a legacy of the British Empire. The Parliament of the United Kingdom meets in the Palace of Westminster and has 2 houses, an elected House of Commons and an appointed House of Lords. All bills passed are given royal assent before becoming law. The position of Prime Minister, the UK's head of government, belongs to the person most likely to command the confidence of the House of Commons. This individual is typically the leader of the political party or coalition of parties that holds the largest number of seats in that chamber. The Prime Minister chooses a cabinet and its members are formally appointed by the monarch to form Her Majesty's government. By convention, the monarch respects the Prime Minister's decisions of government. The cabinet is traditionally drawn from members of the Prime Minister's party or coalition and mostly from the House of Commons, but always from both legislative houses, the cabinet being responsible to both. Executive power is exercised by the Prime Minister and cabinet, all of whom are sworn into the Privy Council of the United Kingdom, and become ministers of the Crown. The current Prime Minister is Boris Johnson, who has been in office since July 24, 2019. Johnson is also the leader of the Conservative Party. For elections to the House of Commons, the UK is divided into 650 constituencies, each electing a single Member of Parliament, MP, by simple plurality. General elections are called by the monarch when the Prime Minister so advises. Prior to the Fixed Term Parliaments Act 2011, the Parliament Acts 1911 and 1949 required that a new election must be called no later than 5 years after the previous general election. The Conservative Party, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, formerly as the Liberal Party, have, in modern times, been considered the UK's 3 major political parties, representing the British traditions of conservatism, socialism and liberalism, respectively. In both the 2015 and 2017 general elections, The Scottish National Party was the third largest party by number of seats won, ahead of the Liberal Democrats. Most of the remaining seats were won by parties that contest elections only in one part of the UK, Plaid Cymru, Wales only, and the Democratic Unionist Party and Sinn Féin, Northern Ireland only. In accordance with party policy, no elected Sinn Féin members of Parliament have ever attended the House of Commons to speak on behalf of their constituents because of the requirement to take an oath of allegiance to the monarch. Devolved administrations. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland each have their own government or executive, led by a First Minister, or, in the case of Northern Ireland, a Dáil First Minister and Deputy First Minister, and a devolved unicameral legislature. England, the largest country of the United Kingdom, has no such devolved executive or legislature and is administered and legislated for directly by the UK's government and Parliament on all issues. This situation has given rise to the so-called West Lothian question, which concerns the fact that members of Parliament from Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland can vote, sometimes decisively, on matters that affect only England. The 2013 Mackay Commission on this recommended that laws affecting only England should need support from a majority of English members of Parliament. The Scottish Government and Parliament have wide-ranging powers over any matter that has not been specifically reserved to the UK Parliament, including education, healthcare, Scots law and local government. In 2012, the UK and Scottish governments signed the Edinburgh Agreement setting out the terms for a referendum on Scottish independence in 2014, which was defeated 55.3% to 44.7%, resulting in Scotland remaining a devolved part of the United Kingdom. The Welsh Government and the National Assembly for Wales have more limited powers than those devolved to Scotland. The Assembly is able to legislate on devolved matters through Acts of the Assembly, which require no prior consent from Westminster. The Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly have powers similar to those devolved to Scotland. The Executive is led by a diarchy representing Unionist and Nationalist members of the Assembly. Devolution to Northern Ireland is contingent on participation by the Northern Ireland administration in the North-South Ministerial Council, where the Northern Ireland Executive cooperates and develops joint and shared policies with the Government of Ireland. The British and Irish governments cooperate on non-devolved matters affecting Northern Ireland through the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, which assumes the responsibilities of the Northern Ireland administration in the event of its non-operation. The UK does not have a codified constitution and constitutional matters are not among the powers devolved to Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. Under the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty, the UK Parliament could, in theory, therefore, abolish the Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly or Northern Ireland Assembly. Indeed, in 1972, the UK Parliament unilaterally prorogued the Parliament of Northern Ireland, setting a precedent relevant to contemporary devolved institutions. In practice, it would be politically difficult for the UK Parliament to abolish devolution to the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly, given the political entrenchment created by referendum decisions. The political constraints placed upon the UK Parliament's power to interfere with devolution in Northern Ireland are even greater than in relation to Scotland and Wales, given that devolution in Northern Ireland rests upon an international agreement with the Government of Ireland. Law and criminal justice. The United Kingdom does not have a single legal system as Article 19 of the 1706 Treaty of Union provided for the continuation of Scotland's separate legal system. Today the UK has three distinct systems of law: English law, Northern Ireland law and Scots law. A new Supreme Court of the United Kingdom came into being in October 2009 to replace the Appellate Committee of the House of Lords. The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, including the same members as the Supreme Court, is the highest court of appeal for several independent Commonwealth countries, the British Overseas Territories and the Crown Dependencies. Both English law, which applies in England and Wales, and Northern Ireland law are based on common law principles. The essence of common law is that, subject to statute, the law is developed by judges in courts, applying statute, precedent and common sense to the facts before them to give explanatory judgments of the relevant legal principles, which are reported and binding in future similar cases, stare decisis. The Courts of England and Wales are headed by the Senior Courts of England and Wales, consisting of the Court of Appeal, the High Court of Justice, for civil cases, and the Crown Court, for criminal cases. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land for both criminal and civil appeal cases in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and any decision it makes is binding on every other court in the same jurisdiction, often having a persuasive effect in other jurisdictions. Scots law is a hybrid system based on both common law and civil law principles. The chief courts are the Court of Session, for civil cases, and the High Court of Justiciary, for criminal cases. The Supreme Court of the United Kingdom serves as the highest court of appeal for civil cases under Scots law. Sheriff courts deal with most civil and criminal cases, including conducting criminal trials with a jury, known as Sheriff Solemn Court, or with a sheriff and no jury, known as Sheriff Summary Court. The Scots legal system is unique in having three possible verdicts for a criminal trial: guilty, not guilty and not proven. Both not guilty and not proven result in an acquittal. Crime in England and Wales increased in the period between 1981 and 1995, though since that peak there has been an overall fall of 66% in recorded crime from 1995 to 2015, according to crime statistics. The prison population of England and Wales has increased to 86,000, giving England and Wales the highest rate of incarceration in Western Europe at 148 per 100,000. Her Majesty's Prison Service, which reports to the Ministry of Justice, manages most of the prisons within England and Wales. The murder rate in England and Wales has stabilized in the first half of the 2010s, with a murder rate around 1 per 100,000, which is half the peak in 2002 and similar to the rate in the 1980s. Crime in Scotland fell slightly in 2014-2015 to its lowest level in 39 years, with 59 killings for a murder rate of 1.1 per 100,000. Scotland's prisons are overcrowded, but the prison population is shrinking. Foreign relations. The UK is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, a member of NATO, the Commonwealth of Nations, the G7 finance ministers, the G7 Forum, previously the G8 Forum, the G20, the OECD, the WTO, the Council of Europe and the OSCE. It is also a member state of the European Union in the process of withdrawal. The UK is said to have a special relationship with the United States and a close partnership with France, the Entente Cordiale, and shares nuclear weapons technology with both countries. The Anglo-Portuguese alliance is considered to be the oldest currently binding military alliance in the world. The UK is also closely linked with the Republic of Ireland. The two countries share a common travel area and cooperate through the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference and the British-Irish Council. Britain's global presence and influence is further amplified through its trading relations, foreign investments, official development assistance and military engagements. Canada, Australia and New Zealand are the most favorably viewed countries in the world by British people, sharing a number of close diplomatic, military and cultural ties with the UK. There is considerable public and political support for increased trade, foreign policy cooperation and mobility of citizens between the UK and Canada, Australia and New Zealand under a proposal known by the acronym CANZUK, with 68% of British people stating that they would endorse the proposition in principle. Military. The Armed Forces of the United Kingdom, officially, Her Majesty's Armed Forces, consist of three professional service branches, the Royal Navy and Royal Marines, forming the Naval Service, the British Army and the Royal Air Force. The forces are managed by the Ministry of Defence and controlled by the Defence Council, chaired by the Secretary of State for Defence. The Commander-in-Chief is the British monarch, to whom members of the forces swear an oath of allegiance. The armed forces are charged with protecting the UK and its overseas territories, promoting the UK's global security interests and supporting international peacekeeping efforts. They are active and regular participants in NATO, including the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps, as well as the Five Power Defense Arrangements, RIMPAC and other worldwide coalition operations. Overseas garrisons and facilities are maintained in Ascension Island, Bahrain, Belize, Brunei, Canada, Cyprus, Diego Garcia, the Falkland Islands, Germany, Gibraltar, Kenya, Oman, Qatar, and Singapore. The British Armed Forces played a key role in establishing the British Empire as the dominant world power in the 18th, 19th and early 20th centuries. By emerging victorious from conflicts, Britain has often been able to decisively influence world events. Since the end of the British Empire, the UK has remained a major military power. Following the end of the Cold War, defence policy has a stated assumption that the most demanding operations will be undertaken as part of a coalition. UK military operations in Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya have followed this approach. Setting aside the intervention in Sierra Leone in 2000, the last occasion on which the British military fought alone was the Falklands War of 1982. According to various sources, including the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the United Kingdom has the fourth or fifth highest military expenditure in the world. Total defense spending amounts to 2.0% of national GDP. Economy. Overview. The UK has a partially regulated market economy. Based on market exchange rates, the UK is today the fifth largest economy in the world and the second largest in Europe after Germany. Treasury, led by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is responsible for developing and executing the government's public finance policy and economic policy. The Bank of England is the UK's central bank and is responsible for issuing notes and coins in the nation's currency, the pound sterling. Banks in Scotland and Northern Ireland retain the right to issue their own notes, subject to retaining enough Bank of England notes in reserve to cover their issue. The pound sterling is the world's third largest reserve currency, after the US dollar and the euro. Since 1997, the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee, headed by the Governor of the Bank of England, has been responsible for setting interest rates at the level necessary to achieve the overall inflation target for the economy that is set by the Chancellor each year. The UK service sector makes up around 79% of GDP. London is one of the three command centers of the global economy, alongside New York City and Tokyo. It is the world's largest financial center alongside New York, and it has the largest city GDP in Europe. Tourism is very important to the British economy, with over 27 million tourists arriving in 2004. The United Kingdom is ranked as the sixth major tourist destination in the world, and London has the most international visitors of any city in the world. The creative industries accounted for 7% GVA in 2005 and grew at an average of 6% per annum between 1997 and 2005. The Industrial Revolution started in the UK with an initial concentration on the textile industry, followed by other heavy industries such as shipbuilding, coal mining and steel making. British merchants, shippers and bankers developed overwhelming advantage over those of other nations, allowing the UK to dominate international trade in the 19th century. As other nations industrialized, coupled with economic decline after two world wars, the United Kingdom began to lose its competitive advantage and heavy industry declined, by degrees, throughout the 20th century. Manufacturing remains a significant part of the economy but accounted for only 16.7% of national output in 2003. The automotive industry employs around 800,000 people, with a turnover in 2015 of £70 billion, generating £34.6 billion of exports. 11.8% of the UK's total export goods. In 2015, the UK produced around 1.6 million passenger vehicles and 94,500 commercial vehicles. The UK is a major centre for engine manufacturing. In 2015, around 2.4 million engines were produced. The UK motorsport industry employs around 41,000 people, comprises around 4,500 companies and has an annual turnover of around £6 billion. The aerospace industry of the UK is the second or third largest national aerospace industry in the world depending upon the method of measurement and has an annual turnover of around £30 billion. The wings for the Airbus A380 and the A350XWB are designed and manufactured at Airbus UK's Broughton facility, whilst over a quarter of the value of the Boeing 787 comes from UK manufacturers including Eaton, Messier Bugatti Audi and Rolls-Royce. BAE Systems plays a critical role in some of the world's biggest defence aerospace projects. In the UK, the company makes large sections of the Typhoon Eurofighter and assembles the aircraft for the Royal Air Force. It is also a principal subcontractor on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the world's largest single defense project, for which it designs and manufactures a range of components. It also manufactures the Hawk, the world's most